Right everyone, welcome to the Woodwork. So what I'm going to be talking about in this video is 3 underachievers, 1 from each league, League 2, League 1 Championship as always. And we're going to sort of see what's going wrong and see where they can improve and maybe what the end of the season looks like for these teams. So we're starting League 2 as always, and Carlisle would have probably been in most people's, you know, you look at the big content creators on your YouTube, for example, like Callum Fowler and Gab Sutton, and they would have all had them in their top 7 or even top 3. I saw them in some, and they were certainly in my top 7 at the start of the season, but things haven't started well for them. I mean, they've got Mark Williamson in charge, which I'll get onto in a minute. But they've only got 8 points, 2 wins out of 14 games. And Carlisle are someone that you would associate with, you know, good home form. Carlisle's a long way away, tough place to go. You know, you'd think they might pose some sort of a threat there, but they just haven't been on it at all this year. I mean, 2 wins and 2 draws, and those 2 draws have come in their last 5 games. So before that, you know, 2 wins and 7 losses. 2 wins and 7 losses in your first 9 games. Funnily enough, they're not bottom of the league. Morecambe are down below them. I feel like Morecambe had less of an expectation at the start of the season. I mean, I know they came down the other year, but as I said, a lot of people would have had Carlisle up there. I mean, even though they finished bottom of League 1, you felt that they were the strongest coming back up, and partly I still believe that. I mean, you know, other than Port Vale, of course, top of the league, you know, Carlisle have kept most of their squad they went down with, and after their January signings, they had a pretty decent team and they picked up some good points. So a few games into the season, Carlisle sacked Paul Simpson and brought in Mike Williamson, who, let's just get onto him. So Mike Williamson was MK Dons, and after losing 3-0 to their rivals AFC Wimbledon, he was borderline sacked anyway. But for some reason, Carlisle decided to come in and pay £200,000 to get their man in charge, and it has just not gone well. I mean, Williamson football, MK Dons have probably the best squad in the league, one of the best, if not the best. And he couldn't get them playing football unless like conditions were perfect. Williamson tended to beat managers that were about to be sacked or teams that were just far lower in quality than Dons were. So for him to go to Carlisle with a worse squad, funny, my biggest criticism about Mike Williamson was always that he didn't have a plan B, and yet he's playing a different formation at Carlisle. I'm not sure how his football's going. I mean, it just isn't going to work. It isn't going to work unless you're at Stadium MK or you're at Chesterfield or at, you know, a bigger club, a better ground. You're just not going to play the style that he wants, and it shows because they already want him out. And, you know, to pay all that money for him, and I think they were after MK's sporting director as well, but that fell through in the end. But yeah, to get, you know, to pay that money to get that manager in, and for him to be a top target, and for him to do what he's done, and for Carlisle United to have the output they've had is very poor. But on to the point of they're underachieving, you know, because they were in most people's playoff positions, as I said earlier. So how do they improve from this point? Well, number 1, sack Mike Williamson, sort of sweep that under the rug. That's just a mistake from the start. You know, he's a long-term manager, and when you're in the bottom 2, you don't have time for long-term. It's almost a write-off already this season for Carlisle in a way, but they've just got to make sure they don't get cut adrift. Bring in someone with a bit of experience. If they have the ambition to get Williamson, I can see them getting the Barrow manager from last season. Pete Wild, I can see them getting Pete Wild, obviously not in a job at the moment, and if they have a bit of ambition, he can definitely keep them up. He did very well with Barrow last year, and even with the state of Barrow's pitch for 6 months of the season, he managed to play some decent football there as well, so I think he'd be a good fit for Carlisle. But yeah, I mean, for them it's just about stability at the moment, and as I say, not getting cut adrift, and if they can put some sort of run together, we saw it last season with Doncaster, maybe they can put some sort of playoff push together, but you know, it's going to be very difficult for Carlisle with the players they have. I mean, you see the goal last week that Harry Lewis like palmed the ball into his own net. Moments like that when you're almost like destined to go down really, but I mean, it's very early doors, so we'll see how they go on for the rest of the season. Now moving on to League 1, there are a few underachievers in League 1, namely, you know, Leyton Orient, Wigan are down there, quite a few people have Wigan in their top 6, but we can't not talk about Burton Albion. I mean, no wins in 12 games, the only side in the EFL not to win a game. What is going wrong there? Burton have obviously sacked their manager now, Mark Robinson, probably the right choice. I don't think he's overly proved much as a manager, and I mean, 5 losses in 5, bottom of the league, no win, makes sense to me. Early links are linking him to Gareth Ainsworth, who, as I said, I don't overly rate. You know, the ball's going to be played about 50 minutes a game if you bring him in, so I suppose if that's the way you want to stay up. But yeah, no, I think, as I said, it's not a write-off for them this season. They can bring someone, a decent manager, and like, I suppose Gareth Ainsworth, right, he's proven it at this level. I mean, Wickham have always been a good team under him, just didn't work out at QPR. Never going to work out at QPR for him. It was always going to be too sentimental. I feel like they would have always sacked him too late, no matter what happened in that situation. I mean, obviously it worked out for QPR, but they were always going to sack him that 2-3 games later than they should have done because of that sort of, you know, clubman type mentality around him. But no, I think he'd be all right at Burton. I think he'd probably keep them up, but I don't see them doing anything more than that this season. But in terms of what's gone wrong, I just don't, I mean, obviously, they scored 13 goals and conceded 25. So instantly you look at the 25, right, and you go, how do you improve that defence? It probably is tactical, right? A lot of defending is tactical, so maybe you can look at the manager for that. But in terms of individual mistakes, I mean, they've, you know, League 1 to League 2 is a bigger job than people think. I mean, everyone talks about League 2 relegation because going to non-league is actual hell, and trying to get out of National League is actual hell. But League 1 to League 2, no club in the last however many years has done anything in League 2 from coming down from League 1. Look at MK Dons. I mean, they came down from League 2 by, 1 point they could have stayed. I think at 1 point that season they could have stayed up, and yet they didn't go up. They came 4th. 3 teams came ahead of them that were in League 2, and I mean, 2 of them were in the National League 2 years before that. So it is a really difficult job, but I think Burton will stay up. I think they just need to get a run going, and there's not enough teams in this league. I mean, League 1 this season is very poor, in my opinion, and especially from sort of, I mean, you look at Bolton in 9th. Below them, I mean, Stockport are a decent side, Peterborough are a decent side, but from sort of Stevenage down, all these teams down here, there's just not a lot of quality, and you don't feel like many of those teams, maybe Blackpool, but you don't feel like many of those teams are going to put a big run together and leave Burton behind. I mean, they obviously need to get their first win, but you feel like once they get their first win, they can get a bit of a run going, and maybe they'll go on from there and probably finish mid-table. I don't see them doing anything more than that. Finally, the Championship. Now, there's quite a few to talk about here. You know, QPR, I mean, a lot of people would have had them mid-table. Luton Town, obviously Premier League last year in the relegation zone. But the one I'm going to be talking about is Coventry. Now, the reason I'm talking about Coventry is, we'll get onto Luton in a minute, but Coventry's squad and their budget has always been talked about in like, they're always talked about like a promotion pushing side, and they just haven't been that this season. They haven't found any consistency. They've lost 6 games already. They've only won 3. And consistency, as I said, is the word here, because they just can't find that consistent back line. I mean, they constantly change it around. I think they've had 2 clean sheets this year, and they've both been from Bobby Thomas and Liam Kitchen. There's the 2 centre backs. So you know, and they put Lewis Binks in there, and this could be Mark Robins' last year. If they're still down here by Christmas, he's really struggling, I think. But I mean, the players they've got, Sakamoto, Haji Wright. I know they lost Callum O'Hare in the summer, but that alone shouldn't be such a big loss. I mean, he wasn't there for half the season last year, but that alone shouldn't be such a big loss that they end up down the bottom. But Mark Robins, one of the longest serving managers in the league, you know, maybe he can turn them around. I mean, they got a win in their last game, so who knows? Maybe they can push on from there. But you know, they'll definitely want to keep an eye on. And just a quick one on Luton Town. I mean, relegation zone is a bit of a low drop. I wouldn't have said they'd have gone back up. I don't think they spent enough money in the Premier League, and then now they haven't spent enough money out of the Premier League. But I mean, Luton could go down. Luton could very, very seriously go down. And I mean, that's frightening for Luton fans, because sort of to have that big jump up. I mean, you know, National League, League 2, League 1 Championship, all the way to the Premier League in 11 years or something. And to be when do you stop? You get relegated twice, when does it stop? That's the worry for them, and they've got their plans to build that 25,000 seat stadium, and for that they definitely need to stay in at least the Championship. But it's just not clicked. I mean, as I said, they didn't spend enough money in the Premier League, and they've even lost some players since they come down. They lost Belly to Ipswich. Adebayo's not finding form. It's just really tough for them at the moment. But Carlton Morris is becoming fit again. He's massive for them, I think. He's, you know, someone that could keep a team up. I mean, he almost tried to do it with Barnsley, but they were so bad that year. But yeah, I mean, players have started poorly. I mean, Tahith Chong started poorly. You know, made that mistake in the last game for the goal. As I said, Adebayo looks like he's on ice most of the time this season. He's really struggling to find form. So you just hope for Luton's sake that they can put it together. And there's all the fans are still with Rob Edwards, mostly. I mean, I know there was that chant against him the other week, but I don't think that was more against him. I think it was more sort of giving the team a kick up the backside, if you like. So, you know, I don't think he's lost the dressing room or lost the fans overly yet, but that could change very quickly. You know, the bottom of the league isn't as bad as you think. I mean, all of these teams down here could spring a surprise. I mean, Portsmouth and QPR have had really tough starts, especially Portsmouth. Plymouth seem to be inconsistent, but I mean, Plymouth could spring a surprise and beat someone 4-0. That's what Plymouth are like this season. And Luton just don't seem to have the quality, which is amazing to think, because I mean, look at the results they got last season. I mean, they almost got a point against Arsenal. They were really impressive in the Premier League for the year, and they had two teams below them, let's not forget. And Sheffield United were an absolute mess when they came down, so I think they've done really well to be in that top four. But no, I think Luton, I mean, things can always change for Luton, can't they? And I feel like they will. I mean, something will click. They might have a few transfers in January, and playoffs, would you say, for Luton? Probably, but I don't see them going up again. I think that might have been the plan, but I don't really know what the plan is for Luton. I thought the plan was going to be to come down this season and then push up into the Premier League for next season, but clearly the owners are more focused on the infrastructure of the club, which I suppose in the long run makes sense. But you know, at the end of the day, the infrastructure is no good if you're in League 1 or League 2, as teams like MK Dons have proved. It just doesn't really matter. So hopefully for their sake and for their fans' sake, they could put a run together this season and push on to stay up. Anyway, thanks for watching the video. Comment down below if there's something you want to talk about, one of the teams, or if there's another team you think that's underachieving that I didn't mention, and I'll come back to it in another video. So thank you guys, see you soon.